to see how genetic something is, you compare identical twins to either fraternal twins or same-sex siblings, because same-sex siblings, they also share the same, background, environment, parents, but they only have 50% genetics on average, whereas identical twins have 100% genetics. So if something's really genetic, it's going to be dominated by identical twins. And this is something I kind of started noticing basketball. Just before I even did this study, I'm like, basketball is so filled with identical twins. So I went to Stanford's undergrad, a huge Stanford basketball fan. We always suck for like 5 to 10 years. And then a new pair of 7-foot identical twins comes and saves our program. And then we're like making the Final Four. We're crushing it. So it was the Collins twins first, and then it was the Lopez twins. And if you actually look at the NBA, there have been 10 pairs of twins, probably all of them identical, at least 9 of them identical. There's conflicting information on one pair of twins.
Which pair is that?
I think it's Stephen and Joey Graham was the conflict. There was conflicting on them, and there was conflicting one on Carl and Thomas and Carl and Charles Thomas. Okay. But I reached out. Charles Thomas is now a coach, and I just found him on LinkedIn. I'm like, are you identical or fraternal twins? He told me they were identical. So I was able to do my investigative report to reconcile that conflicting information. But I think Joey and Stephen Graham, if you look at them, are probably identical as well. They seem pretty similar. They look pretty similar to me. But it's just, if you do the data, so then I built a model. You can actually build a model. Basically, you have normal distributions of basketball ability, environment, and random stuff. And then you kind of say, you just plug the model into, and you plug the model and see how could you get this many identical twins in basketball. And it's clear that basketball is just off the charts genetic. I think I say 0.75. I think it's even higher, more 0.8, 0.85, just insanely genetic, which makes sense because height is one of the most genetic traits we have, about 0.8.
Well, one of the most remarkable, numbers from either of your books was like you started like 5'11" or 6 feet, and every inch doubles your chance. That's incredible. Yeah. Doubles your chance up to like 7 feet, where it becomes like a 1 in 5 chance or something.
1 in 7,
That's incredible.
It's interesting because Malcolm Gladwell in one of his books says that like basketball, you just need to be tall enough, and the best basketball player of all time is Michael Jordan. I guess about 6'6", 6'7".
Jordan, the 99.99 percentile of
Jordan, 99.9 percentile. And the whole point is, he was the best basketball player of all time, but there are way more 6'6" people than 7'2" people. So it doesn't. So when you actually look at the entire height distribution, it doubles. Just about every. It's linear as far as we can go. Once you get to 7'1", 7'2", 7'3", it starts jumping
you're
around.
Like Manute Bol. How many people are as tall as Manute Bol in the world? Probably. Is he like the only one?
My guess is at some point it changes because 8 feet above, it's usually a thyroid disorder that's led to it, which probably would make you a worse athlete. But so there may be a point at which, like, I doubt, I doubt people over 7'8" or whatever have.
Yeah. Well, did you hear about that guy who was supposedly from North Korea, who was supposedly like 7'11" or something, and just never left North Korea? And they got a picture of him at like Kim Jong-il's funeral. Did you ever see this story?
No, I haven't.
Okay, I might be remembering this incorrectly, but it was something like that. But yeah, he was in North Korea, so obviously never got to play against anyone else.
Yeah. It's interesting because actually that section, the book "Don't Trust Your Guts" about how you can use data to make better life decisions. And I wanted to get to a point where could you just know your genetic capabilities? Robert Plomin has this great book, Blueprint, and he says everyone should go with your genetic flow and kind of figure out, okay, I'm good at this, or I'm not good at this, and then you don't waste your time. I talked to some companies. There's a company in Singapore that does it, but I was just so convinced that it was total bullshit. The data is just not there at this point. They're trying to tell you, they're trying to tell you, you can be a great violinist, and there's a huge market for this because parents just eat it up. So like they get a report and, you have A genetics for violin and C genetics for clarinet, but it's just such garbage. I think we could get to that point, but we're very far from that point. Now you could do it with basketball. because actually genetics, that you can now predict someone's height better with their genes than with knowing their parents. And there have even been studies. So Sean Bradley, the 7'6" player, they done a study of his genome, and they're just like, he's just filled with all these tall person genes that it's very obvious just from his gene pool that he would be enormous. So you could imagine someone 2-3 years old, like my for me, I had no chance. My dad was 5'8" on a good day, and my mom's about 5'4". So I mean, there was no way basketball was ever going to be in the cards. But if you have a dad who's 6'5" and a mom that's 6 foot, knowing whether you're going to be like 6'4", 6'2", or 6'9", would be really useful in deciding how much attention to pay to basketball, right?
Yeah. So the most genetic is basketball, right? Football is pretty high up there, right?
It's a little bit lower. Football, baseball is very interesting because baseball, there are tons of brothers, just an enormous number of pairs of brothers in baseball, but much fewer identical twins, certainly compared to basketball. If you do that, if you put that in my model, which I have on my website, I'm going to play around with, I might try to turn it into an academic paper at some point, but because I think it's really cool way to think about these issues is, so if you baseball, this domination of brothers and also father-son pairs and very small number of identical twins, I think there's a big nurture component to baseball. So if you're Vladimir Guerrero Jr., you're definitely getting genes, but you're also learning how to swing at a very young age and getting your form exactly right. So that could play in. So yeah, it's kind of funny because Don't Trust Your Gut was supposed to be a book of all the major life decidecisions. And I'm
sports stuff is great.
I'm such a sports nut that I'm just like, can I fit this in at all? I'm like, because I can't spend 4 years really, like, I'm gonna vomit if I have to look at another happiness study. Like, I gotta look at twins in basketball. I gotta look at scholarships in sports. I gotta look at this stuff because I'm just like so obsessed with this info that I'm like, I kind of forced it in there.
Yeah, so the brothers versus twins is interesting because when you break up the twin or the adoption studies, it's same environment. So having 100% genes is not that big of an advantage over having 50% of the same genes, but being father-son is much bigger advantage than being unrelated. So or brother or just brothers. So yeah, that's great. And then the least stuff is like diving, right, and like horse riding.
Equestrianism. It's like
isn't some of the stuff like everybody tries basketball at some point. Everyone, like, maybe a lot of people play baseball at some point, but few people are even going to try diving. So it's like it could be more genetic if like everyone as many people play basketball.
For sure, I think it could be. Yeah, I think it may be. I think there are these studies. Were you tweeting about that? The Matt Iglesias, that politics becomes more genetic the more knowledge you have, which is kind of interesting.
Yeah, I've seen that.
So there's interesting ways that that it could become more genetic. It'll be interesting to see how genetics have changed over time. There's a lot more to do. The methodology, I have to point out, is far from perfect because I didn't include this in the chart because I thought it was so obviously a limitation of the methodology. But if you do the percent of same-sex siblings who are identical twins, the highest sport by a very, very wide margin is synchronized swimming. And I don't think that's because of genetics. It's just because like they are the most synchronized. You can't be more synchronized than looking exactly the same. So you always have to think of. I was trying to do it for actors and actresses as well, and that comes as off the charts genetic. But I think that's because identical twins just are kind of useful in the acting world.
Yeah.
For a variety.
Full House, the Olsen twins. Yeah, that makes sense. But one of them that surprised me was the weightlifting is actually low. Right?
Yeah, very low. The samples, I could have standard errors. So if you did the standard errors, weightlifting maybe could be as high as 10% of, or like I think about when I did the math, like 7% of the same-sex siblings could be identical twins because it's a little bit of a small sport. So it may be, if I had to bet my life, like I guess every time you do a study, you should be Bayesian. So you should start with how you think the world works, and you should adjust a little bit. So weightlifting would have been high, and the fact that there are 0 twins pushes me a little bit lower. Yeah. But it doesn't I'm not ready to say that weightlifting is as low as equestrian and diving, because it could just be
Yeah.
sampling
Well,
error.
weightlifting is an insane sport when it comes to just like dedication and lifestyle and training. And it could be, the strength is, highly genetic. But like, the times in my life, like I've worked out a lot, is usually like something emotional going on. Like I'm trying to prove something or I'm trying to get girls or something. And so it's like, it seems like very environmental whether you actually want to make the sacrifice. Well, if you're just a 7'2" guy, right, you just pick up basketball in high school and you just discover you're good at it. So
Oh,
it
and
does
then
sort of make sense.
I didn't even say steroids is probably
Yeah.
huge in weightlifting. So that may whatever genetics there are, that may be swamped by just who took steroids and who didn't take steroids. So
Yeah, and maybe identical twins have more of a propensity, but it just adds more error. It just adds more
yeah.
uncertainty to the whole thing.